Today we're going to talk about custom classes, which is a new feature that was brought into version 6 a few weeks ago. It didn't work at first and it does now, and I'm really quite excited about it. This is me coming from the future, having just finished the video, and I just really thought it was important to say that much of the benefit of this technique of using custom classes comes towards the end. And towards the end of this video, you're going to see that I've incorporated techniques, for instance, of looking up the cost of shipping using an API call going out to FedEx, using tax, allowing tax to be calculated from an API call that perhaps is different from state to state as it is in the United States, and also some other complicated features such as the threshold of maybe when free shipping kicks in, and another one which is also US law, and I'm sure Europe has an equal raft of different legislations too, which is where we can add tax to the shipping or not, depending on the states. Different states within the United USA have different legislation. So I wanted you to know that within some relatively simple code called a custom classes, which is what we're going to cover here now, you're going to see by the end of it, we've got this huge flexibility of the logic that we can control, which I don't think is possible nearly as easily if we were to do it in traditional ways, which would be not using custom classes, but maybe using endless action chains to do the same thing. So I hope you enjoyed the video. That's me from the future. Let's carry on. We're going to use a shopping cart to demonstrate the use of custom classes. So to get the full benefit of this tutorial, you're going to have some form of a design of a shopping cart. And I'll show you the one that I've got here at the moment. It's a very basic shopping cart that's been wired up to do a few things. It does not have the custom classes into it, but you need to get to this point at least in order to be able to follow this tutorial. So the shopping cart consists of a shop front like this one with a button that's add to cart. Now when we add to cart here, it's just loaded up with basically a demonstration action. This is not the custom classes, we haven't done that yet, to show that it's going to return the product ID, in this case the price. And each of those you can see the product ID. So it's just wired up at the moment to be ready for us to be able to use the custom classes here. The checkout button then goes through to a standard checkout button like this one, where one can play around with the quantities of the product. Again, I've just put in placeholder products here, because this is not the real shopping cart, so that we can just demonstrate that this actually will return the product ID and the new value there. Okay, so that's going to be used in the classes when we get that far. And note how you can't go below 0 on any of these. On the delete as well, we're going to tell the custom class which product to delete from the shopping cart. This is also wired up here, but it doesn't do anything. And on the place order, just to give you a really idea that we're just simply putting putting actions in here that are available for wiring up. Now, if you want to actually use this exact shopping cart, then you can either use this design, or you can use a design perhaps by using the widgets that are built into Flutterflow and wiring them up similarly. It really doesn't matter, but if you do want to use mine, then you can actually get most of the resources, all the resources for it, from my resources page at intelligentquestions.dev. And just to give you a brief history of how I did that, I started off in Stitch. I gave it a prompt and said create me these 3 pages. I then imported those, or dragged them or copied them across into Figma over here, so that I was able to use viberflow.com there to be able to convert those into Flutterflow code. I then actually imported the database into my project. So if we're just going to have a look at my project over here, the reason why I did that first, I'll explain to you in a minute. My project is here. So I have a database at the moment which has got these products into it. So I added the products here, and then I imported the products into the project using a CSV file, which I've also published here on intelligentquestions.dev. So this is what it would look like here. You can see I've started to create the resources for this page. If you go into this page, you will see that there is a CSV file. You can import that into your project, and that will save you quite a lot of time. The reason why I did that first is because then when we go through to to add these custom widgets into it, which are the custom widgets for each of the 3 shopping cart designs I showed you, you're going to see over here that we've already got products in there, so it'll pick up that we've got the products already. But by the time you get to see this tutorial, I will have filled out all of the custom widgets over here if you want to use them. But swiftly moving ahead, as I said, this is about custom classes. It's not about designing a shopping page, checkout page. So at the risk of repeating myself, you need to get yourself to a point at which you've got a shop front where you can add products, which at this moment is just creating an action for each product, and you need to have a checkout page where you can alter the quantity of each of the products you've selected before. Once you've got to that point, we can start talking about the classes themselves. Now the question is, what does a custom class look like and how does it work? And where does it go in the Flutterflow project? Now I've quickly gone across to another project just to give us an idea of how that looks, and then I'm going to go back to the shopping cart project that we're working on and to do it from scratch. But this is what a typical shopping cart product custom class would look like, and here is the code here, and it goes into the custom code section of the Flutterflow project here, and this is what the code looks like. And just to give you a clue, this code was predominantly generated using Perplexity, but what I'm going to do initially is go back to Perplexity and just ask it to describe for us what's going on in this, because it's useful to do it that way, and it gives me something to work from to explain to you. So in this, we've got the declaration that this is a class, and it's a class product. What we're trying to achieve here is to create logic that will replace the logic that you might otherwise done in action chains. And it can be done in very, very simple terms. And what we do is initially at the beginning here is we define what a single product item looks like. We then define what the shopping cart is going to contain, which is over here. And then in the final part over here, these are called methods. These are what would replace basically things that one might otherwise do in action chains, which is, for instance, to generate the total, list the products, get the product list items and things like that. And these are called methods. So if we just go back to how that was described in Perplexity, the class declaration is this at the top. The constructor, this is what is known as the constructor over here, which is what a single product looks like. We then have the shopping cart itself, which is declared over here as a separate class. And then finally, we have the methods, which are the logic that we're going to use in order to be able to add products, take products, delete products. So that is what it looks like. Now let's go back to constructing exactly the class that we want to use in our particular project. Let's now just compare the class that we've had in the cart test project over here with the shopping cart system that we're creating at the moment. I'm looking here at the database fields, and you can see in the shopping cart system we're creating now, we've got name, description, price, product image, and product type. Now over here, these fields really do need to be represented in this line over here, and they are currently not, as you can see exactly. Now the product ID is actually going to be the document reference. Now we do have a name, we do have a price, we do not have a product image, and we do not have a product type. So we need to add those here and here. And we're also going to keep the quantity in here, even though it's not part of the database. And that is because this here, the constructor, is going to be used to create the shopping cart. So everything that's in here is available in the shopping cart. Now in the shopping cart you clearly do want to have a quantity. Now many of the other things in this, which is the logic, which are the methods that we're going to be deploying, are probably going to be the same. But I tell you what I'm going to do, which you may consider to be a slight cheat, but it is using modern AI tools. I'm going to go across to Perplexity, and I'm simply going to ask it to make an alteration to this existing product start, and to bring it up to date with the fields that we've got here at the moment. So what I've said here is adapt this custom class so that it includes product image URL and a product type string. Ensure, if required, the methods and cart are updated too. And after a few seconds, it's going to come up with this. It is basically most of what we want, but we're going to add a few extra bells and whistles to this now. Okay, I'm going to ask it to add another method to calculate shipping. Shipping will be 10% of the get total unless the total exceeds $50, where shipping will be 0. Okay, and it's written a new method for us, which we're going to add to the existing one, or we'll ask Perplexity to output the entire code in a minute. Let's just think of whether we want another custom method here. How about to calculate a discount? Okay, I've asked it to add another method which calculates a discount defined as a double, where 0.15 is 15%. It accepts the double as a parameter. And this is what it's given us here. And then I'll do exactly the same for tax. Okay, to make life easier, we'll just ask it to print us the entire class. And here it comes. Okay, so let's copy that now across to our project over here, and let's add that to the custom code. So going back to our shopping cart system, we're going to add a custom code. So add code file, and we are going to paste that in. And we're going to call that product.dart. We save the code file. We check the code. And if everything has worked properly, some magic happens here. You're going to see over on the right-hand side, after we checked the code, not when we saved it, it created two classes. The product class, which you see it is called the constructor, as we defined before, and the shopping cart class here. That is now looking very good. This is me coming back from the future, having tried to wire up the classes here. Perplexity and I have spent a while coming to the conclusion that we need to convert what is held in the application variable into a mapped JSON string, so the output of it is a mapped JSON string. And we do that with these lines of code here. So they will be on the resources page exactly as we are now. And we're going to come to that when we go back to the future, if you like. I'm going to explain in a bit more detail why that is the case. So if we just have a look quickly at the shopping cart, you can see we've got a get total here. And this is basically going to return the total of the shopping cart. We're going to see get products. That's going to return a list of the products, calculate shipping, calculate discount. These are all pieces of logic that we otherwise would have had to have done in action chains. And I think you're going to agree with me with the combination of AI and the simplicity of the very small lines of code that we're using to have to do what can be some relatively complex things. We are really saving a lot of time and getting a lot of power out of the Flutterflow system here. So these custom classes are really very powerful indeed. Now, how do we use them? Well, the first thing we need to do, and this is part of the Flutterflow instructions, by the way, is we need to assign each of these classes to an application or a page variable. Now, it doesn't matter necessarily which one it's going to be, but I'm going to do it to a page variable, an app value as they're now called, in order to be able to make the shopping cart available anywhere across the project, and that's going to simplify things. It could be done as a page variable too. So we're going to add an application state variable, and you're going to see in the list here that we have something called custom classes. Now in the custom class, you can see you can select your source, which is the product.dart, and you can select your class. Now your class initially, we're going to do one for each. We're going to do one for the product. Now the product is not a list. Okay, because it is simply one product. It defines what one product looks like. So that would be the name, the ID, the quantity. Not so much the quantity, but the name and the description and things like that. Although the quantity is in there, and we're going to create that so it's not a list. Oh, we need to give it a name, which we'll call it product class. Okay, and we're going to do the same for the shopping cart here. And the main difference here is that in the shopping cart, so we're going to see where it is still the product.dart code that we implemented. Now, you may think that this is a list because there are many items in a shopping cart. That is not actually the reason why this is a list. It's a list because there can be many different shopping carts. Now, that is actually the nature of classes, and it comes in very useful. Not so much maybe for a shopping cart, but imagine a multiplayer game where each class was holding the details about that user, including their scores, their position in the leaderboard, whether they're playing the game. In other words, you could remove a user from a multiplayer game by removing their class. But in this particular case, we have to put it as a list, or Flutterflow won't accept it. It means there can be many shopping carts. Now, in my shopping cart design, in my shop front over here, I have my add to cart button, which at the moment has an action which returns the product ID and the price. Now, if you're not using my exact template over here, my design, then you all should do the same thing. There should be an action associated with the add to cart, which is specific to that particular item. So I'm assuming that you've done that, because everything else about what I'm about to show will be the same if you have done. Now, my custom widget for the shopping page is called Shop All. So the Shop All is this page here. And as you can see, I've got down here an action for on by pressed. Okay, so we need to open that, and you're going to see that's where we got the informational dialogue of the document ID and the price from. Okay, so the first thing we need to do on this action is to set the stage, if you like, and that is to set that application state variable to be the product. This sort of, as I say, it sets the stage. So this is in state management, and we update an app state, and the app state that we update is going to be the product class over here, and the product type is going to be, we're going to set the value of that, and the value that we're going to set is for product. There's our available options, and the constructor is going to be product. We haven't got really many options here. Now, what is slightly confusing is that it's going to ask us to add values to this field. Now, there's not a lot that we can do actually about that. We do have to add the values here, although in actual fact they're replaced when we go to the shopping cart with values from the database. So really, this product ID, which is the document ID, can be in actual fact any value. So I'm going to take it from the product documents, which is the query for all the products on that page, and I'm going to say just take the first one. So I'm really filling it out there with get document property with any old reference, to be honest, and that's why it is a little bit confusing here, but we do need to populate that, and the other ones are going to be slightly simpler. So we're going to say the name of the product. We can actually just set that manually to be product name, and so on and so forth until all the different fields are filled out. Now, I note here that product image is coming in as a value of a string. That is going to cause us some problems in a minute, which I'm going to go and correct in a second. And we're going to put the product type, and we're just simply going to say it doesn't matter here, type. and we're going to confirm that, and that's all of them done. So now we've initialized the class for a single product, we can create the shopping cart itself. To initialize a shopping cart, we're going to add the action, and the action is going to be also to update that state management, but this time the state management we're going to update is going to be the shopping cart itself. The shopping cart type we're going to add to list. A bit confusing, but this means we're going to create a shopping cart. There could be multiple shopping carts. So we're going to add to the list a shopping cart, and we're going to see that we've got an available option here of a cart. The constructor is a cart. We don't have a lot of choices here, and we can confirm the creation of that shopping cart. Okay, so this step is going to require a little bit of concentration because we're now going to add a product to the shopping cart that we created. Now, remember I said that there were potentiality of creating multiple shopping carts. Well, there are. So we need to select the correct one. So we are now going to create a custom class action, and we're going to call a method, and the method that we're going to call is going to be the application state, which is the shopping cart. Here, well, which shopping cart are we going to use? Well, we've only got one, but it has to be the first one. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated. We need to add the first shopping cart. We need to add the items to the first shopping cart. I suppose there are some instances where you might have multiple shopping carts. I can't think of one, to be honest, but this is the nature of classes, that you would be able to do that in a different application. So we're going to confirm that, but the method name we're going to use, now you can see here are all the method names that we created before. It's going to be to add a product, and we now need to add the product. We've got the available options there as product, and this is where we set the actual values that are going to be added to the shopping cart. Now, document ID is fairly simple because you can take that as a callback parameter. The document reference is there. That's simple, and also the price is fairly simple because that was also a callback parameter. Just to show that was over there was price. The quantity is going to be 1 initially when we add a product, and the value, the name, well, that's actually a little bit more complicated because we didn't put that as a callback parameter, but it doesn't mean that we can't do it because it is in the product document. But we are going to have to do a filter on that one to get the one that we want. We're going to filter for the document ID. This is me coming in from the future, realizing there's a much simpler way of doing that. If we had added a backend call read document into the action chain, we could have done that by picking up, of course, the callback parameter, which is the document reference, and then give that the name, the product document data. That would have made all the data of that document available in a single query, rather than doing a filter. Much more efficient way of doing it. And then on the cart add product, everything else would be the same. I'd have to fill out all of them for this to be accepted, but which I will do. So let me fill out the other ones until we get to the name, and I'll show you. So here on add name, rather than doing that rather complicated filter, we're going to do it on an action output, product document data name, much simpler there. And we need to go through and do all the other ones as we did before. Now we have a problem with the product image because it's held within the custom class as a string. This is a bit of a Flutterflow annoyance, to be honest, because in Flutter, image URLs are a string, but it won't accept it. If I go in here and I look at the action output for the document reference, the document data, you're going to see its product image. It's looking for a string, and the product image here is of the wrong form. So to get around that, I needed to create a custom function to be able to do the conversion. So if we go and have a look at the custom function, I've got to convert the image URL. Now this is also going to be in the resources, so you can go and have a look at what this function does. It is so simple. It simply takes the string of an image path and it returns the image path string, exactly the same thing, except it returns the value as a string so that we can put the string in there. So if we close that off and we say, right, we're going to convert the image, The image path that we're going to use is again the action output. It's going to be the product document data, and now we can, as you can see, select the image. Product type again using the new way, which would be the action output, product document data, and product type. And that is all of them done, so we can confirm that. A much better way of doing it. So just to recap there, we've got our initial action, which creates sets up the product class. We then do a similar thing to create up our shopping cart. Now remember, it could create a number of shopping carts, and I'm coming on to this. And to that shopping cart, we added a product, and we took that product from the button of the selected item by both using the callback that we had built into our shopping page and also filtering on the product ID, which was another way of doing it. So I included both there. But we have a problem here, which means that if we select another item to do this, it's going to create a new shopping cart because this shopping cart's a list. So it's going to create a shopping cart every time we add a new product, and we clearly don't want to do this. That's quite simple to fix, and I'm going to do that now. We're simply going to add a condition that says don't update the app state, which is here to create a cart, if a cart already exists. So we're going to add a condition here, and the condition is going to be a single condition. And the condition is basically going to be, have we already got a shopping cart? So the first value is going to be here. It's going to be the shopping cart itself, the app state here, and the shopping cart. And we're going to say, is the number of items in that shopping cart greater than 0? Now, if it's greater than 0, we do not want it to create an app state. So we're going to actually move that. We're going to cut that action, and we're going to put it over here. That's going to stop the potential of creating multiple shopping carts as we go through. So now let's have a look and see how that looks when we run it. Okay, so I'm going to run this in the desktop version. Now it actually errored the first time I did this, and the fix on that one is on the by pressed here on the add products part of it here. I did need to put in default values across all of them over here. It was as simple as that. So on the name here, I've just put in a def name. It can be literally anything, but it cannot be null, which is what it is supplying if you don't put anything in there. So on product type over here, again, I just put in def type. Anything would go in there, and then it will work if you do that. It did not throw up errors, which I think is a Flutterflow flaw, but that's what you need to do to get it running. And once I got it running, it actually is working quite well. And if I bring the across over here, I've added a couple of products. Let's just add a product here. You don't see anything happening over here at the moment. But if I do go over to the debug area over here, we can see that we've set up our product class correctly here insofar as it's got the initial product items values in there just for the class, for the product class that we needed to do. They're not the ones that are in the shopping cart. Now you see in the shopping cart here we've got item 0, and it just says instance of cart. Now that's not very useful when it comes to actually seeing, well, what's in the cart. All it's really saying is that there is one shopping cart, but I'm not going to tell you what's in it. So I'm going to show you how you can fix that so that it does show you what's in the shopping cart. The answer to that again lies within the custom class. It's actually this line down here, which basically says, please return the items in the shopping cart in a string. And the same goes for the product. It's an override over here. But in a way, this is quite complicated, and my recommendation to you is to use this shopping cart custom class as the template. Use something like Perplexity to make the actual changes to the methods yourself that you want on there. Let Perplexity do it for you, but start with this as the major template, because it is a little bit complicated and it did take me quite a while to figure out. Quick reminder, do remember to put default values in for each of these over here. If you do not, it's going to error when you try and build. Okay, running the shopping cart and putting the dev tools side by side, we can see we've got empty shopping cart at the moment. Let's add 2 items. Let's add the Pixel 9 and let's add the Samsung Odyssey over here. And you can see on the right hand side we've got some stuff going on, and the important thing is that we see here in the shopping cart class, and we can highlight that to see it in greater detail. We've got the 2 items that are added there, and that they're also listed as human readable strings, which is great progress. It's also worth noting here that we've got the shopping class is the item 0, and that they've all gone into that. And once again, at the risk of repeating myself, this is because this is the first and only shopping cart, item 0, and here are the items in it. But we still do have a problem insofar as, whilst this looks like it's a JSON list, it's actually a JSON string that is formatted like a list, and we need to do something to convert that into a list so that we can read that into our forms when we show what the contents of our shopping cart is. And I'll show you how to do that now. We do this by ensuring that we have within the class action here, the product.darts here, that we have a method that returns the list that's in the shopping cart as a JSON list here. So cart to JSON string is a method, and it's going to be the first method that we use. It's going to return the JSON as a list. Now we're going to have to save that list somewhere. So we're going to save that list into the shopping cart JSON list over here. So if we go back to the shopping cart over here on what happens when we on a buy pressed here, we are going to call the cart to JSON string method from our custom class. Okay, so let's do that as though we were doing that for the first time. So let's just disable these, shall we? Disable. So just ignore those for the moment, as though I was starting from scratch. Okay, we do this. We need to call the cart to JSON string method, and we do this by adding an action, and that action is going to be a custom class action, and we're going to call a method. Now here we need to select the shopping cart, the live shopping cart that we've got, and that is held in the app state, not to be confused with the initialization of that shopping cart. And there it is, the shopping cart is held there as the shopping cart class. We select that, and at risk of repeating myself, it's the first and only shopping cart over there, and so we can select that, and the method name that we're going to use is we're going to use a cart to JSON string, and then we're then going to give this an output variable name. Now I've done that over here already. It's exactly the same, so I'll delete that action, and we can see over this one, if I enable that one again, you can see I call that get cart JSON. So that's going to output that as a JSON. And the second thing that we need to do is we need to just save that output there to the app state that we've set up as a application variable. So we need to go through another step here, unfortunately, which is we need to convert what is coming out of that JSON string using the following custom function. So let's go and have a look at that. Let's edit the function. Again, this function is incredibly simple. It's just simply taking the JSON string and it's decoding that JSON string over here. Now, the result of that is that it will allow us to save the output of this, which is getCartJSON, as as an application variable. Now, in a perfect world, we would like to believe that we could read the what's in the shopping cart that is set up with the initial application variable, just simply read it as any other field. Unfortunately, we cannot. So just to recap, we need to use the custom class method, the method to create a JSON string. We need to convert that JSON string into a Flutterflow readable format, and I've included the function to do that. Incredibly simple one. And finally, we save that as an app state. That is what we have to do at the moment. And as I say, in future, perhaps Flutterflow will simplify this for us. But there are only 3 steps there. If you follow these steps, it will do what I'm about to show you, and we can move on to the fun stuff, which is seeing how those class methods actually work. So as you can see, going back over here, the consequential result is perfect. It means we now have a shopping cart list JSON which has got the items individually listed in them. So let's just add a del ultra sharp over here so we can see what I mean. We add that and we see we get the item added to the shopping JSON cart list. So yeah, a bit of a convoluted around the houses way of doing it, but as far as I know, it's the only way of doing it at the moment. And it does give us this rather perfect result of a shopping cart here with the items in it that we need. So we can therefore now use that shopping cart list over in the checkout page or the checkout summary page and start using some of those other methods to change the quantity, to remove items, calculate tax and shipping, and all sorts of much more fun things such as that. Now the fun part now is how we actually calculate the total, the shipping, the discount and the tax. Now each of those are, if you recall correctly, they are methods in our custom class. So over here, if we look at the product class, we can see we've got those calculate tax with discount, the cart.json string, we've used that before, the list products. Where are the other ones? Calculate the discount over here, and we've got ourselves a rather neat little calculate shipping one over here. If you recall, I decided that anything, if the total was less than $50, you would pay for the shipping. If it was over that, it would be free, and that it would be 10% if it was less than 50. Now I'm going to change that to 500. You know why? Because I don't have anything that's less than 50, so we can't see whether it's working. So I'm going to save that and to see if it is working. But moving on to how we now initialize those within Flutterflow, we're going to go back to the action chains over here on the checkout summary page. Now we're going to hold each of these subtotal, shipping, discount and tax as page variables. So the first thing that I did over here was to set up page variables for each of these: the cart total, the shipping total, the tax total. We've got the document ID selected. I didn't actually use that. I could probably remove that. But these 3 are the main ones over here. And in fact, we probably need a 4th, but we're going to come to that. And we need to set those by at various times when we make changes to either the quantity or by adding a new product or by even just coming to the page in the first page. We need to set those by accessing those methods from the custom class. So the first time we need to do that actually on when the page is first loaded. We need to establish what those page variables now values are, and that is actually really quite simple. We'll go in and have a look at how we do that. So on the on this, which is on the page load, we are going to call each of those custom class methods to get the total, get the shipping, and calculate the tax. And we are then going to save each of those to the page variables. We're then going to make sure that the custom class method is resaved back into the list that we see, just as a precaution that will be necessary in a minute, and I think you'll see why. And the result of that is that we establish and initialize each of these three values over here, which is the cart total, the shipping total, and the tax total, which we are taking now from the page states. So just to briefly recap on that, when we first open this page, we need to calculate what the totals are, what the shipping is, and what the tax and discounts are. And we do that on a page load by by accessing these class methods. So let's just look at one class method so that we can see how we do that. Let's imagine that we're doing this one from scratch. Okay, so we'll do this one here. We're going to add an action. The action that we're going to do is the custom class action. We're going to call a method. We're going to go and get our shopping cart, which is in the app state over here, the shopping cart class over there. Remember, it's the first shopping cart. It's not filter list items, it's items at index. It's the first and only one there. And what we're going to do is we're going to get the cart total, get total, and we're going to give that an action output name, and we're going to use that action output name to update the page state over here. Now, since I've already done that, I'm just going to delete that one over there. You can see on this one I called it get total, the action output, and then over in the update page state I set the value to be get total action output for the total, misspelling there, shipping total, and for the tax total over here. And that initialized the page when you first came into it. Now we need to start adding the class methods to each of these buttons over here. And I'm just going to show you that I've done those, and I'm going to show you how I've done them. So for instance, on the Pixel 8, we've got one at $6.99 here as one of our items. I'm going to increase that to 2. Now I've got a little bit of a debug callback over here to check that it has correctly picked up those values, which I'm going to remove later on. And we can see now here that we've got 2 items and that the amount has increased to 2679. I'm now going to reduce that just to prove a point, and we can see it's back to 1979.96, which is the correct value. We're going to come on. I mean, shipping and tax are calculated in a similar way, but how did I alter these values over here using the values of the individual items over here? I'm now going to show you. If you recall correctly, on my checkout summary page, I've got a callback, which is an action that is triggered by on quantity change. Now, if you're using your own layout and your own form, you'd have something very similar. When you clicked that button over here, this one, it's got to return these 2 values. Basically, it's as simple as that. That's what I'm doing here. So in my case, if we go into what happens when that is triggered, so on the quantity change, that's actually really incredibly similar to the page initialization pages, that we need to update those page variables to take into consideration that we've got a different number of products. Now there's that informational dialogue there. Do you know what? I don't like that anymore. I'm going to disable that action. It's a bit, but that was the callback action to ensure that we were picking up the right parameters. Now this is where the beauty of this logic comes in. We're now going to call the custom class method to update the product quantity. So that is another method, and if you remember rightly, to be for absolute clarity, where we pick that up from. We pick that up from the class action, which is the method that's in there. And how do we get there? Well, we get to that the same way as that we pick up any of these methods now, which is we add the action there, we go and look at the class action. We're going to call the method. We're going to use the live shopping cart. I call it the live shopping cart so you don't confuse it with maybe the initialization parameters over here. The live shopping cart over here, which is the shopping cart, and it is the first shopping cart. We know that one already. And from there, we can update the product quantity. Now, the product quantity takes 2 values, which is the product ID. Now, where do we get that from? We get that from the callback of the document ID. and we on the new quantity we also get that back from the callback, and there it is, the quantity. So that is in actual fact identical to that one now, and I can delete it. And you can do this, and that's the method that you get for getting any of these methods. So now that we've updated the method in the shopping cart, we now have to go through the process of updating all the other fields and cascading that down into those application variables. So we now need to re-get the total, exactly the same as we did on the initialization. Just do it all over again, get the total output. Remember that you've got to give the action output a different name or it'll conflict with the ones that we've got existing. So that one's called output 1. And we do the same for the shipping. We do the same for the tax. Remember, see that they're all called 1. And then we update the page state for each of those. Simple as that. Voila, we have now managed to ensure that whenever we add a new product, a new quantity to that product, we go through the process of using the method to make the alteration to the base shopping cart. We then get the total from that shopping cart, get the shipping, get the tax, and update the page state, and that's all we need to do. Okay, and the remove item is incredibly similar. We're going to let's disable that action there at the moment. We call the cart remove action exactly the same. Method exactly the same as we did for the quantity change. We then update the shopping cart over here. We update the app state, so the view of that shopping cart. We then get our totals, get our shipping, get our tax, and update the page state for that. So the only difference there is that because we're removing the item, we needed to update the app state of the list of items that are in that shopping cart. So if we're just going to go back to here, we're basically saying that we need to remove from that list this item over here. So for instance, if I hit the delete button over there, we've got this old pop-up going on. You see it removes the item from the list over there, and the totals are then updated accordingly. So we add that. We're going to get rid of those pop-ups in a minute. We can see that goes up to there, and then we can remove all of them. So that would only leave us with something around about the $800 mark. So let's remove that and see what it does. There we go, $779.98. So all of that is taken care of. Here we needed to update the app state to ensure that that item was now no longer showing on the list over there. So that's what that does. And this one here is to update the totals, the shipping, and the tax. And it is simple as that. So let's just have a little recap on a couple of these things. You can see that we've got the calculate tax here, and you can see that I've got a value in there of a 0.15. So that value tax is not hard coded into the custom class. So just for the sake of clarity, let's go back to that custom class and see how that was actually taken care of here. So for instance, if we have a look at where's the calculate tax one gone? It is accepting here the tax rate as an external value. And there are others like the shipping. Where have we got? No, the discount here. Well, that's actually hard-coded as $22.50. We're going to change that in a minute, and we're going to play around with a few things to make this a little bit more interesting. But you can see that we are able to accept dynamic values into the class methods over here, which allows us in turn to, for instance, if we look at the action chain over here, for the calculate tax, we can put in any percentage that we like. Now, there are a couple of things that should be noted here. That would allow us effectively to select a different tax rate depending on, for instance, picking up a variable somewhere else that we've not set up here, but we could do. For instance, in America, we have different sales tax depending on each of of the states across the USA. So one could use this as a dynamic and maybe do a callback on that one to pick up the exact tax rate for that particular state. So that's how we can deal with that. On the calculate shipping over here, we have a similar concept there. Well, we don't actually, but we could do what percentage or how we're going to calculate that shipping. Now, I'm going to play around with this a little bit more because I want you to see how powerful the custom actions are. Now, in order to do that, I'm just going to highlight a particular issue that I did have earlier, and that was that in some states in the USA, you apply tax to the shipping. And in other states in the USA, you do not. And that might cause a bit of a problem. But fortunately, we can deal with that fairly easily because we've got these custom classes, and I'm going to show you how. Let me just draw your attention to one little thing. Remember I said that I changed the free shipping to be values of total value of over 500. I've added just one item here, the Fitbit, which is 229, which obviously falls short of that. And you can see here, as a result of that, we've been charged shipping. Now, if I double that, I notice we're still not over 500, so we're still getting charged shipping. So I add another item, the shipping comes down to 0. So we can start handling some fairly complex logic in here, and I'm going to allow that to be even more flexible by playing around with those the methods within the class, so that we can do some really quite sophisticated stuff. So let's focus on that particular piece of logic for 1 second. Say we didn't want to have the shipping as a percentage. We wanted to have that as a value that we look up maybe from an API call to FedEx or UPS or the postal service of your country. We wanted to do that, and we also wanted to have a threshold for free shipping to be also another input parameter, so it wasn't fixed at 500, which currently is hard-coded into the method. So let's go and have a look at how we might go about changing that. So here is the method that we're talking about, which is basically saying that if it's less than 500, then we're going to return that as a free shipping, else it's going to be 10%. So what if we wanted to have that value there to be a parameter, and we also wanted that value there to be a parameter? So we really want to change this calculate shipping to accept parameters. So we're not going to do that ourselves. We're going to again get Perplexity to do that for us. I think probably I'm only going to ask it to change that particular one. So we'll copy that across to Perplexity. And you can see, just out of interest, that I've been talking about here shipping on tax on shipping, which is something I dealt with before. But let's just go into a new Perplexity and ask it to adapt that particular part of the method for our needs. Okay, so this is what the prompt I'm going to use. As you can see, the original one was calling the get total. It was multiplying it by 10%, and then it was saying that if it was less than 500, return 0. I've said here, calculate the Flutterflow app, also the method so it accepts parameters for the shipping value instead of 0.10, and have a parameter for the 3 threshold. Let's put a semicolon there, have another parameter, also a double. The shipping value is no longer based on percentage of total. I wanted to make sure it understood that we don't need to get the total anymore. And let's see what it comes up with. To be honest, we probably didn't even need to use Perplexity to do that, but we are trying to minimize the amount of actual coding that we do, and I think I've got away with doing 0 in this video. So let's copy that. Let's just examine it for a second. It's saying it's required. That we haven't used that before, but it means that it won't accept anything less than a value into that, and required double. I might remove those because I think Flutterflow might do that in a different way. Get total. If the free total greater than 3 threshold, return 0, else the shipping fee. So the shipping fee is now hard coded. Now, when we replace that in here, I expect this to throw up some errors in actual fact. Am I going to leave the required in there? We don't have it on any of the others. So I didn't like that. So let's leave it as it is. I expect it to throw up some errors because we now have some values elsewhere that probably aren't set. So we're going to save that. And we're also going to, it doesn't necessarily always pick up the changes unless you do check your custom code over here. As expected, I've got all of these errors going on, but they're not errors here. They're errors because these values aren't set anymore. So in actual fact, that is telling us that we've done this correctly. So what we need to do is we need to go through each of these errors and say, well, what's the shipping fee going to be? Well, again, I've done it as a fixed value so that you could use an API call into the FedEx system to work out based on the address, based on the region, the distance from you, etc., all of that, what that value actually is. But, you know, I haven't got that API call and I'm not doing that here. So let's just put that in. No, $200 seems a bit excessive. And what's the free threshold on this one? Let's say the free threshold is $600 there. And that should get rid of that particular one. And we're going to put that throughout. The discount amount is a double. Oh yeah, let's change that to discount amount of 50, discount rate of 0.15. We're going to fix all these errors one by one. We've got 8 left, so I'm going to go through them, but they're all the same. They're all missing the excuse me, the shipping fee and the threshold. So let me fix all of those and see if it worked. Okay, so I've added all of those and I'm going to refresh the page and we're going to see what happens. So let's try first with one item of less than 600. So we'll add that to the cart, check out, and we can see we've got our fixed fee of $20 over here going on, which is exactly what we put in. It should go to free shipping because if that goes over 600, and voila, it has done. So we've now got fairly complex way of calculating the shipping. It's not based on a percentage and it can have its own threshold. Now we can go through and do certain other things which are quite cool in terms of calculating, for instance, whether the tax is applied to the shipping or not, which is a legal requirement in the United States. So let's think about how we might do that. Now, we've already got something quite complicated going on with the tax at the moment. We see calculate tax. It's already taking into consideration, firstly, that we need to remove the discount before we apply the tax. And also, we needed to consider whether the tax was based on the shipping value or not. So here is the current method for that. And we need to put that through Perplexity to come up with exactly what we want. Now, because this is actually calling from other parts of the custom action, I'm going to supply this in its entirety to Perplexity. And I'm going to ask it to calculate a fairly complex tax situation from that. So I'm going to copy the whole lot into there. Okay, so here's the prompt I'm using. The following custom class for Flutterflow app calculates tax in a particular way. We want to change that based on these rules. We need to add a parameter, a Boolean, to indicate whether tax is applied to the shipping value or not. The tax should consider the Boolean value and apply the tax rate to the total, including shipping minus discount, if the Boolean is set to true, and apply the tax amount to the item total minus discount, but excluding shipping, if the Boolean is false. And I just need to paste in the entire custom class there so it knows what to consider. And if it doesn't happen to supply the entire as an output, I might ask it to. So let's just see what it comes up with that. Actually, you know what? I'm quite happy with allowing it to calculate, to just edit this particular one, but we want to have a look at what it's done here first. Required tax rate, shipping, this, that, and the other. The question is whether it's going to ask those for as separate values. I don't want it to. I want it to take it from the rest of the methods, to use the methods to define what the shipping should be, not to have it as a separate value. Okay, I've asked it to ensure that the shipping value or tax amount is not an external parameter, but calculated from other methods dynamically. It's come up with this, fairly complex. Yes, maybe we're going to copy that and replace the calculate tax in our custom class over here and see if that works. So all of this was used to calculate the tax at first, so we're going to replace all of that. Let's try and do it in the right place, shall we? Okay, save that. Okay, once again, it's picked up the fact that we're missing parameters now. So let's go and check what they are. Okay, for some reason we keep losing the shipping fees. So let's put those in again. Just run through each of those errors. It just means that there are parameters missing, and run that again and see how it looks. But we do notice, out of interest, that we've now got the Boolean for whether shipping is to include tax or not. I mean, tax is to include shipping or not. I've noticed that in some cases one needs to set this false to true, and we set it back to false again for it to pick up. Don't know why, but just a little tip there. Okay, so by filling out the missing parameters, we've got rid of all our errors. We're going to refresh that and see if it works. Okay, so since the threshold is $600, if we add this to cart, we should get charged tax at 20, and we did. So we now, shipping. So we now need to work out whether the tax is to include the shipping or not. And based on the Boolean being set to false in every case, it should not. Let me get my calculator out and see if that's correct. Now, we've got a slightly convoluted logic here insofar as that we seem to have two places we can pick up the discount amount, and one of them is here. But once I put that in as 2250, then the calculation over here was correct at 7162. So let's see what happens if we switch that Boolean over here and change that calculate cart and have the tax to include shipping. Okay, let's add the same item and go to checkout. Well, we certainly get a different value. Let's check to see if that's correct. And it is. So that goes to show that the Boolean works. Now, this could be tidied up in many ways, I must admit. I mean, the very fact that we've got, for instance, the tax discount being brought in from several different places is one of the areas that I would change. And probably all of this of the calculate tax, we don't want to have to put this in individually everywhere across the application. So for instance, we've got it here to calculate tax, but we've also got it over here when we change the totals. When we change the totals in the checkout summary, we're going to recalculate here on quantity change. We're going to do the same thing again on calculate tax. Now you want all of those values to be the same, so you don't want to keep putting this in over and over again. But I'm going to leave that to you because I think that we've really covered almost everything that we need to do about custom classes and the shopping cart. And the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle is extremely simple, is how do we get the total up here to be correct? Well, that is simply picking that up by the list of the number of items in the shopping cart. If I go back to the home value over here, it's just the number of items in the list. That is really not rocket science at all. And if we go to checkout, remember I said that we needed to recalculate the total every time we came into the page. That means that this value here is always correct. So we've got ourselves a shipping, zero shipping on a value because we're over 600. What if I take off this one here? we've got the shipping coming in at 50, and we've got the Boolean set to whether the shipping should include tax or not. And the other things that we've got, if you remember rightly, is that we're able to set those values for the shipping and the tax through, for instance, through APIs. You could now call FedEx. You could now call for other parameters on APIs to be able to set those, the tax and the shipping, for instance. So the whole thing can be built up into a very, very professional shopping cart using class actions. Now, the beauty of this is that the methods can be written completely within Perplexity or any other AI editor that you like, and they simplify life. It may be slightly more complicated to get to this point in terms of understanding it, but once you do understand it, you'll realize that this is an incredibly powerful way of working, and that you can replace very complex action chains with some very, very simple methods in your custom class to achieve the same thing. I suppose the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle is in fact what happens when you hit the button for placing an order, this button here, which is not wired up as yet. The way I would go about doing that is quite simply, I would, here we've got the on place order, I would add an action here that would update a backend database Firestore, and I would create a document. Now, I haven't actually created a collection of orders, so I would do that. I would go and create a collection of orders, and I would set that to create the document. And the document that I would be creating would be based on what is in the application variable over here, which is the shopping cart JSON list, because the JSON can be added to a Firestore database pretty much as is. I will leave that to you because it's not really part of this tutorial, but it is basically saying take that JSON list and add it to your shopping cart. I probably would do that here as a class, a JSON class type. Oh, actually, interestingly enough, I have actually got a JSON class type over there, but I haven't finished it off, and I'm going to leave that to you. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this this video, this tutorial. Please leave your comments down below here, and do like and subscribe to this channel. I'm going to be making lots more on some masterclass concepts, because that's what this is. And if you want to be alerted as to when they are, then please subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much indeed.